Hi, all. Thank you for stopping by Crossroads 1010. My name is Chanel, and I am hoping to share a space with you for a moment in time on transformation and transition from one point to the next to work with the cycle breaking and all of the things that we do, patterns that we keep, subconscious programming, as well as spiritual programming, and just pretty much dodge the illusions that are created around us and sometimes starting within us. So that's the purpose of Crossroad 1010. Um, Endings and beginnings and endings. All right. So thanks for stopping by. Today, it's been such a difficult week. Um, Politically, socially, internally, that I thought I would share like the last sermon that I preached in organized church or organized religion, I should say. I am a Christian mystic. I began calling myself that after many years of serving in the faith, seminary, church history, and all that good stuff. Recognizing that I myself am constantly evolving, and the people that I would meet and preach to, or was preached to by another, that we're all in a space of transformation. So I will lose some just off of that statement, and I'm okay with that because one thing I'm tired of is being divided, not just politically, religion, ethnicity, but in general, just being divided within. And so this station will pretty much, if you're up for it, it will challenge, as I'm being challenged, on becoming whole. Like for those of us that have either come out of the church, come through the church, and even those of us that are recovering for the post traumatic stress of the church, we would recall that Jesus, whenever he would cast out demons, that he would ask the person if they wanted to be whole. And I always thought that that was an interesting um, way of ascertaining whether the person was ready for God, if that makes sense, ready for their healing, ready for their deliverance. We all know the buzzwords. And for those of us that don't, it's a good thing because you get to learn it from a genuine place. But pretty much wholeness means to not be in conflict within. And I feel like we are a conflicted society from within. However, you look at dark energy, demons, or darkness, whatever it is, it's the part of you, the part of me, and the part of society that needs to be brought to light. So, first and foremost, the question I ask myself every day is why are things this way? Because things need to come to light. If you're dealing with transition in your life, you're most likely dealing with some things that needs to come to light. I can attest to that. So I'll share stories. I wrote a brief book called Dodging the Illusion just to get out the scenarios that happened to me, realizing that they were happening again and again because A, they needed to be brought to light in order to heal, and B, so that someone else could be aware, because that's what happens, right? We struggle with the motive. So at one time, many years ago, I took a training in community organizing, and I was told that people don't do things for the greater cause all the time. That if people have some sort of self interest in it, then they become stakeholders or buy into that vision. But it's true. And so, as much as we would love to keep evolving to the greater ideals of loving our neighbor, right? We first have to realize that we have to have some sort of stake in it. So, when you are trying to love your neighbor, but you're not loving yourself, then that becomes the first illusion that no one had ever taught me in the church. It's like, be kind to someone, um, be kind to your neighbor, be kind to this person, but then there would be times where I would just want to disrupt, and there were times that I would disrupt, never in the church house because I was afraid, but I would disrupt somewhere else privately. And that was because that was unaccepted. And so that's why we also have psychology. We don't just have spirit, we have mind, body, and spirit. And psychology, good psychology, teaches us that when we repress those things, they need to be brought to light. And if we don't give them the light that they need, that dark energy, demonic behavior, whatever will surface. So, my first opinion on a lot of things that are going on in America today is because it is the stuff that has been hidden, that hasn't been appropriately handled, and it's feelings and emotions, not just of groups, not just of sections of the country, not just a particular political persuasion, but things that are within us, shame and guilt. So however you're looking at it, you're dealing with shame or you're dealing with guilt, and how that is, if that's not brought to light, it comes out another way. So the first part of being unified in one soul is to do the work. And you know what, guys, we're not really good at doing the work. Dodging the illusion is first realize that we rather have the illusion than to do the work, because the work is uncomfortable. And we get tired of people telling us it's uncomfortable. But I gave that example. There's no formula like, oh, if I always turn the other cheek, well, somebody will kick the crap out of you if you're always turning the other cheek. It's how you turn the other cheek, where the healing and forgiveness comes from. So it doesn't mean that you keep putting your cheek out there and say, go ahead, punch me, kick me, kick me. No, you have to have the wisdom to know when to walk away. And that's really when Crossroads 1010 comes in handy. We are always at a crossroads for things that no longer serve us and the places that we're going to. And so, one of the things that I hope is through the examples is that you can even look at my mistakes. You could look at my successes and think about your successes and identify what I don't look at as a mistake. We use the word mistake, but look at it as a way of learning a lesson, right? And so when we go into those repeated cycles or around that wilderness for 40 years or whatever, it's because the lesson hasn't been learned yet. So if you want to know how we're in this space again in America, and it just didn't happen 8 years ago, it happened long before it, if we're willing to admit it. It's just that each go around, it has to get more and more intense until one of two things happen. We stop outsourcing our belief systems and our way of life, right? That we don't need one man or one woman to dictate how we see things, but learn about the man and woman within us, right? That we are our own teacher in a way. In other words, I could shoot all kind of scriptures at you. I could shoot all kind of history and philosophy, but at the end of the day, it is filtering through, and it is based off of your perspective, just like it's based from my perspective of experience and living and reading and whether it's education, formal or non-formal education. I have both. A lot of information. It's school and education is great. I am a proponent of getting an education, but at the same time, I also realize that there's a lot of highly educated, not so wise, streetwise individuals, and I was that person at one time, which is how I kept getting into the illusion even in my career. And what usually will happen for those that are in the transformation phase and they're like, what is going on? My hope is to encourage you. Everything is happening as it should be, and not some blanketed faith, of have faith because I said so or the Bible says so. I actually hope that comes from within, and then the Bible is a confirmation or the words are a confirmation. But have faith in the process that if everything falls apart, it will be built up. What goes up must come down. And so there are certain universal laws in place. polarity, if you will, that things are not always right and they're not always left, right? But the hope is to be balanced, and not balanced in a way of moderate in politics and this, that, and the other, but the balance is understanding that which is within you, that which is in shadowed or darkness, and bring that to light so that it's not running you, that particular darkness, but you're able to command it in a way. And we always have to be careful when we say this, command in a way of, let me say it this way. I don't know how many of you are Trekkies. How many of you are Trekkies? I grew up off of Star Trek reruns, original Star Trek, and Next Generation. And one of the ways I can explain this is an old Star Trek episode that I would tell you to look up called The Enemy Within. All right, Captain Kirk goes to the transporter. He comes back through, but it splits him in two. So there's a very aggressive, lustful Captain Kirk, and then there's a very nice, gullible, um, let's say, mild tempered Captain Kirk. And on the ship, the aggressive, lustful Captain Kirk is running around drinking and trying to hit on the female officers, very high testosterone and very alpha, right? And the other Captain Kirk is like forgetting stuff. He can't really lead. He is unsure of himself and not confident. Now, the other Captain Kirk was very confident and very wrong and very aggressive and very offensive. So there was no way he was going to lead a ship. The mild mannered Captain Kirk, as I said, couldn't lead because he didn't have the confidence and he didn't even have the sharp edge to leading. He just was there. In the end, the moral is when they put him back together is that he needed both sides of himself. Why do I feel the need to say that? One of the things that helped me look at mysticism a little differently, and we can all define it. It's basically the mystics have been throughout history in all faiths. There's Jewish mystics, there's um, mystics. Every religion has mystics. Let's just say that. I'm thinking of Jewish because I met one time that did amazing prayer behind the scenes, and I was like, wow, we're not even of the same faith. But Hindu, Buddhist. The reason that I'm not naming Eastern, and I don't want to get off on the Captain Kirk story, is because Eastern faiths tend to go within and Western tends to look on the external. So anyway, what was Captain Kirk's lesson? That he needed both sides of himself. And so when we talk about turning the other cheek, back to that again, and we're not even preserving ourselves. In other words, we're taking jobs where we know people are going to do us wrong in our intuition, in our guts. We're not looking at our own self-worth, not to the part where it has to become narcissistic, back to the other Captain Kirk, but understand that narcissism comes as a protection. That people who have narcissistic behavior is because they're hurting and they are going back to some childhood crap, just like we all have, but they're feeling that need to stick it to you before you stick it to me. So their whole focus is self, but not in a way that is healthy. It's just constantly trying to protect themselves and take revenge so that they don't hurt, right? And no, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm really just breaking this down as it's given to me or download. So that is the thing that we have to realize is that there is a life in temperance. It is a fruit of the spirit, a life in balance. And similar to Captain Kirk, if we keep trying to hide the one side, we may be the one that can't make the decisions, not confident, especially if you're in a society where, for whatever reason, handicap, money, race, gender, where you're constantly being told you're down here and other people are up here, then that has to be filtered through yourself. And as far as society, when people say your reality will change, and it's not that it's this magical, mystical thing, it really is the psyche. And if my psyche and your psyche transforms, then that will change the collective or the group's mentality. And if our psyche goes in the opposite direction, we will devolve, de-evolve. And I believe that that may be happening, where we're going back to old ways that may not benefit the whole group or whatever. And whatever your belief system is on that, I just say get whole within yourself and make sure it's not for narcissistic reasons because of deep down fear or hurt or things like that. Same thing if you're aggressive, and you feel like everybody is out to get you, understand that it's from within. Okay, I want to just um, pretty much share a little bit of that today just to get our juices running, as far as greater transformation and greater change, to give you a little bit more idea of um, the 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 paradigm that I'm speaking from is always a paradigm, I pray, that is shifting, right? Never too stagnant, so that it can take in new experiences, new evolution, and new life. Most of all, new wine. All right. So may we all have new wine skins to pour new wine in. Um, and Happy New Year's, guys.